Browns needed a backup center, so they made a phone call to their old backup center and got a backup center and maybe a fullback. We'll talk about it. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. You want to become an everydayer? Yes, you do. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Don't miss any of the action. Show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We closed yesterday's show talking about the very unfortunate injury to second-year center from Ohio State, Luke Wypler, rolled up on. It was painfully obvious to see the pain that Luke Wypler was in. Kind of had a really good idea. It was most likely a broken ankle. Diagnosis: broken ankle. Luke Wypler will have surgery. Has not been given a determination whether or not he will be out for the season. We will not know that, obviously for a little while here, probably a couple of weeks before they finally get the full determination just how long it's going to take Luke Wypler to possibly recover. But as it was, the Browns didn't necessarily have a third-string center on this roster. I talked about it going into the game against Green Bay Packers on Saturday. The question was going to be, if they did play a third center, who was it going to be? Because they didn't necessarily have one on the roster. Well, with that being said, Andrew Berry, we talked about it, this is what they do. This is why guys get paid. This is what their jobs are, to fill holes. Wasn't a very arduous or difficult search, I guess. The Seattle Seahawks just recently signed veteran center Williams, which put former Cleveland Brown Nick Harris to either the third or fourth spot on the depth chart at the center for the Seattle Seahawks. Made it kind of easy peasy. Browns will ship a 2026 sixth-round pick. In turn, they get back from the Seattle Seahawks. They get a 2026 seventh-round pick and old friend Nick Harris. Nick Harris drafted in the sixth round of the 2020 NFL draft. I don't think people realize, or maybe they forget, even when training camp started in 2020. Now, you keep in mind this is, COVID time. And Browns, took to the practice field. It had just been announced that J.C. Tretter had a knee surgery. And as we all know, at that point in J.C. Tretter's career, he was not practicing much whatsoever. So Nick Harris, basically as a rookie, went out there and he was the starting center. And for the final 2 years of J.C. Tretter's time here with the Browns, Nick Harris was basically the starting center for the Cleveland Browns every day except for walkthrough on Friday and whenever the game was actually played. I do believe Nick Harris did play, I believe it was the Christmas Day game in 2021. I believe J.C. Tretter was out with COVID. Nick Harris was the starter that day. Showed well at times. There were times Browns played him at guard. He didn't necessarily show so well there. Once you are basically pegged to center, you are a center. You guys can move from guard to center, but usually once you are center, you don't move from center to guard. It's not usually the way it normally works. But, nice to get Nick back here, part of the same draft class as Jed Wills, so has a strong relationship with Jedrick Wills. But even still, this Browns offensive line has been together since, almost 2020. Conklin was brought in 2020. Wyatt was already here. Joel obviously was already here. It was the year that Jedrick was drafted. The vision was that one day, and most likely that day was going to come in the season 2022, when Nick Harris was going to maybe take over and become the starting center for the Cleveland Browns. You flash backwards to what was week 1 of the preseason that year down in Jacksonville. Nick Harris started with Deshaun Watson. It was about 3 plays into it. Nick Harris went down, blew his knee out. Ethan Posick then became the starting center for the Cleveland Browns in 2022 and, seized an opportunity and just grasped it for his own. And, for 2022 and 2023, Ethan Posick was fantastic. We saw Nick Harris get playing time for the Browns. Most of it last year in 2023, we're seeing Nick Harris lined up in the backfield at times. So this is certainly an option and something the Browns can use and use Nick Harris for again. But you heard the story. Obviously, caught a red eye. Was at the building in Berea by 6 a.m. Was first one in the building. Was able to take part in the walkthrough, get himself acclimated. And got to keep in mind, this isn't like a fish, just going back to water here. The system's certainly different. New offensive line coach. This was the Browns going out and reacquiring a player that they had faith in. And understanding that, this was, probably the best move they could make and make it quickly, in replacing, Luke Wypler, and unfortunate again for Luke Wypler. But just as it kind of happens to Nick Harris a couple of years ago, you lose your opportunity because of injury. Now all of a sudden injury opens up and creates an opportunity for you. So Nick Harris is, back with the Browns. You saw the smile. You heard him get to talk. Certainly seemed like Nick Harris never wanted to leave. Browns just necessarily either A, didn't offer to him, or B, the offer he got from Seattle was lucrative enough that, he wasn't going to play the waiting game any longer. With Luke Wypler being drafted, with Ethan Posick still here, there wasn't a real path to playing time for Nick Harris. But Nick is back. We'll see if they reprise the fullback role. But, when you get into a pinch and you've got to make a move and you got to make it quickly, so similar to what we saw last year with Nick Chubb and how quickly the Browns just went out and brought back Kareem Hunt. Sometimes just because, a relationship ends between a player and a franchise doesn't necessarily mean, that things ended, on bad terms. Sometimes, the fits just don't work. Well, all of a sudden with Luke Wypler going down, the fit was certainly there for Nick Harris to return. Other Cleveland Browns transactions today. Brought in linebacker Brandon Boyer-Rendell, Faison Hicks, cornerback safety, brought back again. Safety Chase Williams, former USC Trojan, former San Jose Spartan. He had a tryout with them. He is back with the team. The Browns waived with an injury designation defensive back Vincent Gray. Marcus Haynes listed as a DN, and Browns were using him some at linebacker. Probably a guy that was just filling out the string and was able to play on Saturday. Long snapper Rex Sunahara has also been released, and the contract was terminated for John Kelly Jr. Perhaps that ends the John Kelly Jr. relationship between himself and the Cleveland Browns. John just was a great player, good skill, probably not enough overall athleticism for him to be a contributor in the NFL. Great guy, been around with the Browns for a while. Certainly well, held in well regards. Good guy, good personality. But the Cleveland Browns are just a much, much better football team than they were a few years ago, and their roster is much, much better. And sometimes just because the guys are good, they like the relationship with guys. Talent is always going to be the trump card, and unfortunately, maybe as the Cleveland Browns have become a much more talented football organization roster-wise, unfortunately for John Kelly Jr., maybe his time here has been surpassed. It'll be interesting to see, though, because there's still a lot of questions with the running back room, but you did get to the point where Dante Foreman was back and participating in 11-11 drills today, so certainly a good sign for running back Dante Foreman. Speaking of good signs from practice, one-on-ones today between the D-backs and the receivers were pretty impressive from both sides. We'll talk about it. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, with all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd. We appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. If you are not part of the everyday crowd by now, making new plans, subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Do not miss any of the content. The show is always available. It is always free wherever you get your podcasts. The old receiver in me, still one of my favorite things to witness or watch go down ever, is just wide receivers and defensive backs, tight ends included, just going one-on-one. And, watching the route running, watching, the defensive back play, the back pedal, the sinking of the hips, the break on the ball. It's just mano-a-mano. And, basketball one-on-one, it is what it is. This is the absolute version of football one-on-one between receiver and defensive backs. There were a lot of wins. Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper, Jamari Thrash had a beautiful route. There was another, I'm trying to think, they had Grant Delpit covering. Jamari Thrash wasn't a fair matchup for Grant Delpit. Grant can handle maybe the bigger bodied wide receivers, but the smaller, quicker guys. Jamari Thrash with a win. Prochet with a fantastic catch off a tip. In one of his reps. You really get an understanding of just how talented these position groups are for the Browns. And it's wide receiver, certainly, it is certainly cornerback, and it is certainly safety. And you watch, the diversity, between an Amari Cooper, between a Cedric Tillman, between a Jerry Jeudy, between a Jamari Thrash, David Bell, who unfortunately is going to be out for a couple of weeks, took a really, really good shot in his quad. One of the more, muscle bruises, one of the worst, probably muscles on your body to get a bruise on as an athlete, because you can't get any blood flow going there, which means you get no explosion, you get no speed, you don't really get much movement. So, David Bell, who showed well for himself Saturday, is probably packed up. As far as preseason games, I don't think it's going to hurt David Bell. I think David Bell will still easily make this roster. And again, as I spoke about it on yesterday, David Bell plays almost kind of like former quarterback mentality at the wide receiver position. He just knows where to be. And it's innate, all the talent in the world, but there's some guys that just cannot physically, understand the game that way, read the game that way, see the game that way. And it's just an intelligent matter. It's not talent, it's intelligence. And David Bell certainly has that type of, wide receiver IQ, I'll call it. Everybody wants to call it quarterback IQ, has that type of wide receiver IQ. But you get to see, with Tillman and the size factor, and then the quickness of a Moore and a Thrash, just the smoothness that Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy, run their routes with. And, this is kind of what you think should be why this offense should really take off this year. You've seen Deshaun Watson speak on his own podcast, trying to process and, trying to get the ball as quickly as he can and getting rid of it as quickly as he can. It's a confidence factor in knowing your playbook, in knowing what you do when you are reading coverages. And it's, also a confidence level that I now have. I used to talk about Baker all the time, and, the artist palette. He has got the palette of talent. He truly does. He has an incredible tight end who is impossible to cover from a straight coverage standpoint. He's a mismatch nightmare in David Njoku. Amari Cooper runs routes and makes guys look silly. Jerry Jeudy has that type of ability as well. Elijah Moore is a shut down, throttle, restart quick, just jitterbug type of guy. There are going to be receivers open. The thing for Deshaun Watson is going to be how quickly he can get the ball, how quickly he can read the coverage, how quickly he can find these open guys, because it should be a very, very easy, and I don't mean it like easy, but it should be easy in the fact that there should be someone open on every play. You can have guys running nines, posts, digs, square outs, the smoke routes, the hitch routes, all of these things that these receivers are capable of doing. And as Deshaun has said in his own words, he knows the rack ability, the run after catch ability of all these guys that he's playing with. He has the utmost faith in them. So it is just trying to get the ball as quickly as he can, and understanding that the coverage is usually going to dictate the guy that is going to be open, and just processing it, getting the ball in, lock, load, get it out. And, from the defensive side, MJ Emerson, a couple of interceptions today. You see just the overall ability. And it's not a knock on Denzel, because we all know how good Denzel is. MJ's just bigger. He's just longer. and just can play more physical because he's just a bigger human being. When we're talking about a group that is still waiting for Greg Newsome to come back, Cameron Mitchell was at practice today. He was out there, getting into it, obviously one-on-ones all day long as well. You get to see more of Halassi and, Miles Harden. If Miles Harden continues this pace, Miles Harden is going to make this team, and it's not going to even be an issue. That is the type of talent that Miles Harden has. And that feistiness, that willing to get your nose dirty, no questions about physicality. That is the stuff that will translate very easily to special teams for Miles Harden, and then could very easily lead to certainly reps for Miles Harden, when guys need a blow on defense. We know who the top 3 cornerbacks are on this team. But you see Juan Thornhill out there. You see Grant Delpit out there. Rodney McLeod is still just the undrafted guy out of Virginia, but you just see the supreme intellect the guy has after 12 years in this league. Nothing is too big to him. Nothing is new to him. He knows what he's doing, and he is very, very easy to read, react. Certainly has the time, the experience in a Jim Schwartz defense. And after 10 games last year, his season was over. He was able to basically sit and watch and learn even more, get himself even engrossed into it, looking at it from a different aspect, as he wasn't a guy who was going to be playing. He was a guy who was trying to help his teammates get ready. Just a special, special talent to have. This Browns wide receiver group and tight ends, and we'll see the way the rest of that tight end room shapes out. Jelani Woods could be on the out in Indianapolis. He is a guy that I would think would be fantastic for the Browns. All 6'7.5" of him or whatever. Brent Sobolewski, wherever you are, I know you were a big Jelani Woods guy as well. So the opportunity certainly is there to upgrade the position. Certainly something to monitor. I would like to see Trayton Welch get a real legit chance here. And maybe that is something that can happen in week 2 and in week 3. We'll see in week 3. It'll obviously be a little different once Deshaun gets out there, certainly, to start playing in the final preseason game. But these positional groups are loaded. This Browns, everybody wants to talk about, the Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr. wide receiver room. And look, there were 2 guys who, at one time were 2 of the best probably doing it. It never got the full experience here, never got the full OBJ and Jarvis. It just didn't work out. And obviously we all know there's a million reasons, a million factors for it. But this is one ridiculously good wide receiver room. And for the fact that it was tore apart 2 years ago from basically top to bottom to where it is now, kudos to Andrew Berry. This group, this wide receiver room should absolutely ball out in 2024. We're going to continue on here. We're going to talk a little bit more about what's coming for the rest of the summer, and certainly where Deshaun is and where he will be as far as what he will be participating in over the next couple of weeks. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place, or you're not looking at all. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring every single day. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Do not miss out on anything. Become an everydayer. It doesn't cost you a dime. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Now, Deshaun Watson, as we all know at this point, has been cleared physically. Could take a hit. Could have played Saturday against the Green Bay Packers. Will participate and take as many reps as he's possibly up to, or the coaching staff allows him against the Minnesota Vikings on Wednesday and Thursday. He will not play Saturday against the Minnesota Vikings. Some of that may have to do with the offensive line. As we know, James Hudson is by no means the starting left tackle for the Cleveland Browns. He was the starter in the opener. He might even be the starter in the second preseason game against the Minnesota Vikings, but it's not going very well. And again, not necessarily James Hudson's fault. He is great as a blocking tight end. He has been okay as the starting right tackle for a long period last season in 2023. Of course, the Raven game, he was fantastic. But a starting left tackle, he is not. Hakeem Adeniji has been rotated in a lot there and started today in practice. That probably is a huge reason as to why maybe they are not going to play Deshaun Watson against the Minnesota Vikings when the game will be live and your quarterback could get hit. But he will play in the final preseason game in Seattle. Now, this would normally be way that maybe some teams do it. That third game would normally be considered the dress rehearsal. So, for Deshaun to play in that game, start seeing some live action certainly makes sense. For this week, the joint practices are just more important. You can control them. You can set them up the way you want. So if I want Deshaun Watson in this practice, I want to make sure he at least runs this play, 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 runs this play. You can do all that. You have no control over that within a game, especially a preseason game. One thing goes wrong, one turnover, this, that, or the other thing. You're off the field, you're on the field. You can say, I want to play my starters, the whole first half, and that could consist of 10 plays. There's no control. There's no rhyme or reason. This is the reason joint practices exist, because coaches can allow and control the amount of workload certain guys get, exactly what type of workload they get, and they can get the work they want. There's always the question of chippiness and things getting out of control, and I'm sure there will be a dust-up or two. And if anybody in the Minnesota Vikings is crazy enough to get anywhere within the vicinity of number 79, DeJuan Jones, good luck with all that. So Deshaun will be very active during the joint practices, will not play Saturday against the Vikings, but will get some preseason action week 3 in Seattle against the Seahawks. So, Nick Harris is back. Certainly not a good sign probably for Luke Wypler, who is going to be out for an extended period of time. Sad news to hear there, but a great move by Andrew Berry, making a call to a guy that they can trust, got right back in here and got Nick Harris back. Some other questions. People. I did a spot here today. Talking about a guy like Devin Bush. I think Devin Bush showed well. I think that's important for a guy like Devin Bush. You're always going to take chances on guys who are former first-round picks, but they don't get handed anything when they come into a situation like this, their third NFL team. Yes, Devin Bush has a Cleveland Browns legacy. His father was certainly a Cleveland Brown at one point. There's no question about that. But he's here to earn a spot. Nothing's just given. So, I think it was important for Devin Bush to go out there and look like a guy who was a former first-round pick. So, good on Devin Bush. Could turn out to be a nice, pickup for the Browns. Jordan Hicks has been labeled as week to week, which basically tells me Jordan Hicks is not going to do anything for the rest of the summer. At some point, he'll return to practice and he'll be ready to go September 8th against the Dallas Cowboys. JOK is back in and practicing. Whether or not he will only do practice, the practices Wednesday and Thursday certainly could be possible. I think if he does the practices Wednesday and Thursday, that most likely he'll take him out for Saturday. And so it could be a very, very, light roster again Saturday against the Minnesota Vikings, especially if the Browns feel that these joint practices with the Vikings give them the return that they were looking for. If guys go in there and they show well and they're satisfied with the workload these guys get on Wednesday and Thursday, and it's amping it up 2 days in a row. If they're satisfied with the work these guys give them Wednesday and Thursday, there's a lot of guys that are essentially going to get the free pass for Saturday and not be a part of that game against the Vikings. We'll talk more about the Vikings as the week goes on, certainly with J.J. McCarthy, certainly more of the storyline, Mike Hall, Zach Zinter, J.J. McCarthy. So certainly some storylines there as well. Harris returned, defensive tackle. Harris returned to practice. Shelby Harris returned back to practice today as well. So good sign there. The Browns need, and they need some of these guys to really start getting back into practice. Big time Jedrick Wills. Jedrick Wills right now is probably more loved than any time he's ever been a Cleveland Brown. Because at least with Jedrick Wills, you know what you're going to get. And, if you have your choice of, I can only have one of my tackles back for week 1, you'd say, I want Jedrick Wills back because not that Jack Conklin is not a great player and a former 2-time All-Pro. You have an emerging talent there in DeJuan Jones who can hold down the fort for the time being. It's not looking anywhere close to that case right now at the left side, at the left tackle position. So certainly, monitoring there, and hopefully, for Jed, it's coming soon. These guys have made it to the point where they're actually standing on the field during practice. So hopefully that's some sort of progression, I guess, is what we'll go with there. But make no mistake about it. The Cleveland Browns need some of their talent to start getting back to the field, getting healthy. They did get another one back today. Dante Foreman did participate in 11 on 11s as well. So hopefully a good sign for Dante Foreman, who gave everybody a scare about 10 days ago. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. The everyday crowd is a bunch of nuts, but they're my kind of nuts. Become an everydayer. Subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It is always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go Browns.